Sarah's life was like a tangled ball of yarn. Each day brought new knots of worry. She worked 2 jobs, one at the diner flipping pancakes, and another cleaning offices late at night. It was never enough. Little Lily, her daughter, deserved so much more than their tiny, cramped apartment. The eviction notice stuck to the fridge like a bad dream. Lily was the sunshine in Sarah's cloudy sky. She had bright, curious eyes and a giggle that could chase away any gloom. Sarah worked tirelessly for Lily, but lately, the bills piled higher than her hope. The town of Willow Creek was small and friendly, but even friendly towns had their share of hardship. Sarah felt like she was drowning, desperately trying to keep her head above water. She needed a miracle, or at least a really good idea. Then, she heard about the Helping Hands auction. It was a charity event where people offered their skills or services to raise money for those in need. Sarah cringed at the thought of offering herself, but the thought of Lily losing their home was even scarier. She had to do something, anything. The Helping Hands auction was held in the town square, usually a place of cheerful summer concerts and farmers' markets. Now, it was transformed with colorful banners and rows of folding chairs. Mrs. Higgins, the mayor's wife and a whirlwind of community spirit, bustled around, making sure everything was perfect. The idea behind the auction was simple: people donated their time, talents, or belongings, and others bid on them. Old Mr. Abernathy offered his famous apple pies. The local mechanic offered a free car tune-up. Even the high school football team volunteered to mow lawns for a month. It was a heartwarming display of neighbors helping neighbors. Sarah clutched the small, handwritten card that described her offer: 1 day of help, cleaning, yard work, or errands. She felt a blush creep up her neck. It felt strange, putting herself up for auction like this. She worried what people would think. But she pushed those thoughts aside. Lily needed her, and she would do anything to provide for her. The auctioneer, a jovial man with a booming voice, took the stage. "All right folks, let's open our hearts and wallets and help our neighbors in need." The auctioneer started with Mr. Abernathy's apple pies, which quickly fetched a good price. Then came the car tune-up, followed by the lawn mowing service. Sarah watched, her stomach twisting with nerves. Each item sold gave her a tiny spark of hope, but also a wave of fear. What if nobody bid on her? Finally, the auctioneer held up Sarah's card. "And now, we have a very special offer: 1 day of help from Sarah. Cleaning, yard work, errands, you name it, she can do it." He gave Sarah a warm smile, trying to encourage her. A few people chuckled nervously. Offering a person's time felt different than offering a pie or a service. Sarah felt her cheeks burn. She looked down at her worn shoes, wishing she could disappear. Then, a voice called out from the back of the crowd. "I'll bid $20. It was Mrs. Peterson, the kindly librarian. Sarah's heart lifted a little. At least someone was willing to start the bidding. But $20 wouldn't even make a dent in her bills. She needed a miracle. Just when Sarah's hope began to dwindle, a new figure appeared at the edge of the crowd. He was tall and wore a crisp, blue shirt that seemed out of place in the small town square. He had kind eyes and a hesitant smile. It was Mark, the new businessman who had recently moved into the old Victorian house on Elm Street. Mark hadn't really spoken to anyone since arriving in Willow Creek. He kept to himself, working on his computer and tending to the overgrown garden. People whispered that he was a bit of a mystery. He seemed drawn to Sarah's quiet desperation. He watched her standing there, looking so vulnerable, and felt a pang of sympathy. He hadn't planned to bid on anything, but something about Sarah's situation moved him. The auctioneer, seeing Mark's interest, perked up. "Do I hear 25? Anyone? We have a lovely young woman here offering her services for a good cause." Mark stepped forward, his voice a little shy. $30, he said. A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. This was getting interesting. The bidding war, if you could call it that, was slow but steady. Mrs. Peterson, determined to help Sarah, raised her bid to 35. Mark countered with 40. A few other people threw in small bids, but it was clear that Mark was the most serious contender. Sarah watched in disbelief. She couldn't understand why this stranger was so interested in her. Was he just being kind? Or did he have other motives? She tried to read his expression, but his face was unreadable. The auctioneer, sensing the rising excitement, milked the moment for all it was worth. $40. Do I hear 45? Going once, going twice. He paused dramatically, looking directly at Mark. Mark hesitated for a moment, then raised his hand again. $50, he said, his voice firm. The crowd gasped. $50 was a lot of money for a day of help. Mrs. Peterson shook her head, signaling that she was out. The auctioneer beamed. Sold. To Mark, for $50. He banged his gavel, and the crowd applauded. Sarah stood frozen, unsure of what to do or say. She had been bought. Mrs. Higgins, ever the organizer, bustled over to Sarah and Mark. Well, this is wonderful. Mark, dear, I'm sure Sarah will be a great help to you. Sarah, Mark lives in the old Victorian on Elm Street. I'm sure he can tell you what he needs help with. She gave them both a knowing smile and hurried off to manage the next item up for auction. Sarah stood awkwardly in front of Mark. Thank you, she mumbled, not quite meeting his eyes. For bidding on me. Mark shuffled his feet, looking a little embarrassed himself. You're welcome, he said softly. I just wanted to help. He wasn't sure what to say next. He hadn't really thought this through. Sarah took a deep breath. So, what exactly do you need help with? She pictured herself scrubbing floors or weeding a garden. She just hoped it wasn't anything too difficult. And she really hoped he wasn't expecting her to do anything weird. She had heard stories about wealthy people and their strange requests. She pushed the thought away. She had to trust him. For Lily's sake. Mark seemed flustered by the question. He hadn't really considered what he needed help with. He just knew he wanted to do something good. Well, he stammered, the garden is a bit of a mess. I haven't really had time to take care of it. Sarah felt a wave of relief. Gardening was something she could handle. Okay, she said, I can definitely help with that. But a new worry crept into her mind. I have a daughter, Lily. I usually have to take her with me everywhere. Would that be a problem? Mark's face lit up. A daughter? No, not at all. In fact, he added, a little shyly, I'd love to meet her. I don't get out much, and it would be nice to have some company. He paused, then added quickly, of course, if that's okay with you. Sarah hesitated. She didn't know Mark at all. Was it safe to bring Lily to his house? But she looked into his kind eyes and saw only sincerity. And Lily loved playing in gardens. Okay, she said. Lily would love that. A tiny seed of hope began to sprout in her heart. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. The next morning, Sarah and Lily stood in front of the old Victorian house on Elm Street. It was even bigger and more overgrown than Sarah had imagined. Ivy climbed up the walls, and weeds choked the flower beds. It looked like something out of a fairy tale, but a slightly spooky one. Lily, however, was delighted. Mommy, it's a castle, she exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. She ran ahead, her bright yellow raincoat a splash of color against the gray stone. Mark opened the door, his face lighting up when he saw them. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, a far cry from the crisp blue shirt he'd worn at the auction. He looked more relaxed, more approachable. Welcome, he said, his voice genuinely warm. Come on in. I've got some lemonade and cookies waiting. Sarah smiled. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. As they stepped inside, the musty smell of old books and forgotten treasures filled the air. This was going to be an interesting day. She could feel it. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a flicker of hope, not just for herself, but for Lily too. The garden was a jungle. Weeds towered over neglected rose bushes, and vines snaked across the pathways. Sarah, armed with gardening gloves and a trowel, started pulling weeds with determination. Lily, after finishing her cookies, joined in, her small hand surprisingly effective at plucking out the smaller weeds. Mark, surprisingly, wasn't much of a gardener. He mostly watched, offering encouragement and occasionally attempting to prune a rose bush, usually with disastrous results. He was much better at fetching water and keeping the lemonade glasses full. As they worked, they talked. Sarah told Mark about Lily's love for drawing and her dreams of becoming an artist. Mark shared stories about his work, explaining how he helped small businesses with their websites. He even showed Lily some simple coding tricks, which she found fascinating. It wasn't the hard labor Sarah had expected. It was more like a pleasant afternoon spent with friends. Lily chattered and giggled, running between the flower beds and showing Mark her latest discoveries, a shiny beetle, a colorful butterfly. The sun shone, the birds sang, and for a few hours, Sarah forgot all her worries. As the afternoon wore on, a comfortable rhythm settled over them. Lily, tired from her gardening adventures, curled up on a blanket Mark had spread out under a shady tree. She drew pictures in a notebook, occasionally showing them to Mark and Sarah for approval. Mark and Sarah found themselves talking more openly, sharing their dreams and fears. Sarah confessed her struggles to make ends meet and her worries about Lily's future. Mark admitted that he had moved to Willow Creek to escape the loneliness of city life and find a place where he could feel like he belonged. They discovered a shared love for old movies and a surprisingly similar sense of humor. They laughed at Mark's clumsy attempts at gardening and Lily's imaginative stories. Sarah realized that Mark wasn't just a wealthy businessman, he was a kind, lonely soul searching for connection, just like her. And Mark saw in Sarah a strength and resilience he deeply admired. Lily, with her infectious joy, was like a little ray of sunshine, brightening both their lives. The garden, once a symbol of neglect, was now a place of blossoming friendship. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, Mark noticed Lily struggling to close her drawing book. The clasp was broken. He took the book from her, examining it with a thoughtful expression. This is a tricky one, he said, but I think I can fix it. He disappeared into the house for a few minutes, returning with a small toolbox. With nimble fingers, he carefully tinkered with the clasp, using a tiny screwdriver and a bit of wire. Lily watched him, her eyes wide with fascination. Finally, with a satisfying click, the clasp snapped shut. There you go. Mark said, handing the book back to Lily. Good as new. Lily beamed, hugging the book tightly. Thank you, Mark, she said. Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude. It was such a small gesture, but it meant so much. It wasn't just about the broken clasp, it was about Mark's willingness to help, his attention to detail, his genuine kindness. She looked at him, seeing him in a new light. He wasn't just someone who had bought her at an auction, he was a good person. A really good person. Thank you, Mark, she said, her voice filled with emotion. That was very kind of you. The drive home was quiet. Lily, exhausted but happy, fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her newly repaired drawing book. Sarah glanced at her daughter, a wave of love washing over her. She was so lucky to have Lily. As she drove, she replayed the day in her mind. Mark's kindness, his awkward charm, his genuine interest in her and Lily. He wasn't what she had expected at all. He wasn't some rich, aloof stranger. He was, well, he was starting to feel like a friend. She thought about his loneliness, his desire to connect with the community. She understood that feeling all too well. Maybe, just maybe, they could help each other. When she pulled up to their small apartment, the eviction notice on the fridge seemed a little less menacing. The $50 from the auction would buy them some time. But more than the money, it was the feeling of hope, the sense of connection, that lifted her spirits. Mark's kindness had given her something she hadn't had in a long time, a reason to smile. She knew they weren't out of the woods yet, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like things might actually be okay. Back at the old Victorian house, Mark wandered through the now slightly less overgrown garden. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. He thought about Lily's bright smile, her infectious laughter. He remembered Sarah's quiet strength, her unwavering love for her daughter. He had come to Willow Creek seeking peace and quiet, but he had found something much more valuable, connection. For years, he had been so focused on his work, on building his business, that he had forgotten what it meant to be part of a community. He had been so busy making money that he had forgotten how to make friends. Helping Sarah and Lily had given him a sense of purpose he had been missing. He realized that true happiness wasn't about wealth or success, it was about making a difference in the lives of others. He looked around at the garden, no longer seeing it as a chore but as a symbol of new beginnings, of friendships blossoming. He knew he wanted to be a part of Sarah and Lily's lives, however he could. He just hoped they wanted him too. The fragile bubble of hope Sarah had been carefully nurturing burst the very next morning. She went to start her ancient, sputtering car to head to her pancake flipping job, but it wouldn't turn over. She tried again and again, but the engine just coughed and wheezed. Panic clawed at her throat. Without her car, she couldn't get to work. Without work, she couldn't pay the rent. And without rent, they would be evicted. The eviction notice on the fridge suddenly seemed much larger, much more menacing. She called her boss at the diner, explaining the situation, but he wasn't sympathetic. "I need someone here, Sarah. If you can't get here, I'll have to find someone who can." His words hung in the air like a threat. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. It felt like the universe was conspiring against her. Just when she had found a glimmer of hope, it was snatched away. She didn't know what to do. She was trapped. She needed a miracle, and she needed it now. How would she tell Lily? Mark, who had been working in his home office, overheard the commotion outside. He peeked through the window and saw Sarah desperately trying to start her car. He knew instantly that something was wrong. He hesitated for a moment. He didn't want to intrude, but he couldn't stand by and watch her struggle. He grabbed his phone and made a quick call to the local mechanic, Mr. Johnson, explaining the situation. He asked Mr. Johnson to tow Sarah's car to his shop and fix whatever was wrong, without mentioning his name. Then, he called a taxi and arranged for it to pick Sarah and Lily up and take them to the diner. He paid for the ride in advance, instructing the driver to tell Sarah that the ride was a gift from a secret admirer. He knew Sarah was proud and wouldn't accept charity directly. He hoped this anonymous act of kindness would help her without making her feel indebted. He just wanted to ease her burden, to give her a little breathing room. He knew what it felt like to struggle, and he couldn't bear to see her go through it alone. He just hoped his plan would work. Sarah arrived at the diner, confused but relieved. The taxi driver simply smiled and said, "A secret admirer wants you to have a good day." She couldn't imagine who would do such a thing, but she was grateful. Later that afternoon, Mr. Johnson, the mechanic, called her. "Your car's ready, Sarah," he said. "Someone already took care of the bill." Sarah was stunned. "But, who?" she asked. Mr. Johnson chuckled. "That's the mystery, Sarah. All I can say is, you have a very generous friend." Sarah's mind raced. Who could it be? Then, it hit her. Mark. It had to be Mark. He was the only person who knew about her situation, the only person who had shown her such kindness. She rushed over to Mark's house, her heart pounding in her chest. She found him in the garden, watering the newly planted flowers. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling, did you have my car fixed?" Mark blushed, avoiding her gaze. I heard you were having trouble. I wanted to help." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "Mark, that was so kind," she said, "but I can't accept this." Mark looked at her, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Please, Sarah," he said, "let me do this. It makes me happy to help you and Lily." Sarah took a deep breath and sat down on the garden bench. "Mark," she said, "I appreciate your help more than you know. But I can't keep accepting handouts. I need to be able to stand on my own 2 feet." Mark sat down beside her, his expression serious. "I understand," he said. "I didn't mean to make you feel like you were indebted to me. I just wanted to help a friend." "But we're not really friends, are we?" Sarah asked, her voice hesitant. "We just met." Mark looked at her, his eyes filled with warmth. "I think we're becoming friends, Sarah. And friends help each other. I know I can't replace your car every time it breaks down, but maybe we can find a way to help each other that doesn't feel so unequal." Sarah thought for a moment. "Maybe," she said, "maybe I could help you with your garden. I know you're busy with your work, and I enjoy it. And maybe Lily could help you with your computer stuff. She's a quick learner." Mark smiled. "I would like that very much," he said. "We could be a team. Helping each other out, supporting each other. What do you say?" Sarah smiled back, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I say that sounds perfect." From that day forward, Sarah, Lily, and Mark became an unlikely but inseparable trio. Sarah helped Mark transform his overgrown garden into a beautiful oasis, filled with colorful flowers and fragrant herbs. Lily, with her surprisingly adept computer skills, helped Mark organize his files and even created a simple website for his business. Mark, in turn, helped Sarah with her finances, offering her advice on how to budget and save money. He even used his connections to find her a better-paying job at a local bakery. He also spent time with Lily, encouraging her artistic talents and teaching her about coding. The eviction notice on Sarah's fridge eventually disappeared, replaced by Lily's artwork and a calendar filled with appointments and activities. Sarah felt a sense of security she hadn't known in years. She was still working hard, but she no longer felt like she was drowning. She had Mark and Lily by her side, supporting her, encouraging her, and making her laugh. They were a team, facing life's challenges together. And she knew that whatever came their way, they would be able to handle it, as long as they had each other. Sarah's shoulders weren't as slumped as they used to be. She walked with a newfound confidence, her head held high. The worry lines that had etched themselves onto her face seemed to have softened, replaced by a gentle smile. She still worked hard at the bakery, but she enjoyed it more now. She loved the smell of fresh bread and the friendly chatter of her coworkers. She even started taking art classes at the community center, something she had always dreamed of doing but never thought she could afford. Lily was thriving, too. She was doing well in school, making new friends, and spending hours drawing and creating on her computer. Sarah looked forward to the future, not with dread, but with excitement. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she also knew she wasn't alone. She had Mark and Lily, and they had each other. They were a family, bound not by blood, but by love and friendship. And that, she realized, was the most important thing of all. She felt grateful for the auction, for the unexpected twist of fate that had brought them all together. It had changed her life in ways she never could have imagined. She finally felt like she was home. Mark was no longer the quiet, reclusive businessman who had moved to Willow Creek. He was now an active member of the community, volunteering at the local library and attending town meetings. He had even joined a book club, something he never would have considered before. He found himself laughing more, smiling more, and genuinely enjoying life more. The loneliness that had haunted him for so long had faded away, replaced by a sense of belonging. He cherished the time he spent with Sarah and Lily, whether they were working in the garden, watching old movies, or simply sharing a meal. He realized that true happiness wasn't about accumulating wealth or achieving professional success. It was about building meaningful relationships, making a difference in the lives of others, and finding joy in the simple things. He had found his purpose, his family, and his home, all thanks to a struggling single mom and a charity auction. He knew he would never be the same, and he was grateful for every single moment. He had finally found where he belonged. He was home. The three of them were sitting in Mark's garden, now a vibrant and thriving space. Lily, now a few years older, was sketching in her notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration. Sarah was tending to the rose bushes, carefully pruning the dead leaves. Mark was sitting beside her, reading aloud from a worn copy of The Secret Garden. The air was filled with the sweet scent of flowers and the gentle hum of bees. Lily looked up from her drawing and smiled. "This is the best," she said. "I love our garden." Sarah reached over and squeezed Mark's hand. "Me too," she said. "I never thought I could be so happy." Mark closed the book and looked at them both, his heart overflowing with love. "Me neither," he said. "This is more than I ever dreamed possible." He put his arm around Sarah, and Lily snuggled up beside him. They sat there in silence for a moment, content in each other's company. The sun shone down on them, warming their faces and illuminating their smiles. It was a perfect moment, a testament to the power of kindness, friendship, and love. The Helping Hands auction had changed their lives forever, in the most beautiful way imaginable. It had brought them together, creating a family where they all belonged.